Now we'll turn to On Division, Goldie Goldbloom's wonderful book about a Hasidic family. Needless to say, there is a lot of curiosity about Hasidic Jews. In the Addis and Beth El book groups, we tore through Shalom Dean's book, Those Who Go Do Not Return. That was a beautifully written memoir by a Hasidic man who left his community. And the TV series Unorthodox and Shtisel have been hugely popular. I have heard Goldie Goldbloom say, movingly, that she hopes On Division can serve as a bridge between readers and the Hasidic world. You might want to ask her about that later. For now, I'll just point out the Williamsburg Bridge in my Zoom background. This is a salute to Goldie's bridge building, as well as to the lovely cover of her book. Many of you have read On Division, but some of you haven't. To put us all on the same page, I'm going to quote the book summary from the Association of Jewish Libraries award announcement. Of course, after the program, you're going to be eager to read the whole book. And in the chat box, there's a link to our independent bookstore, Politics and Prose, along with a discount code. But for now, here's what the award committee said. Quote, in On Division, Goldbloom writes about Suri, a newly pregnant 57-year-old mother, grandmother, and almost great-grandmother living in the Hasidic community of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Haunted by the death of her son Lipa, Suri finds herself keeping this pregnancy a secret from everyone, including her beloved husband. The author, a member of the Hasidic community, writes with accuracy, authenticity, and respect, celebrating the positive aspects of the community with beauty, warmth, and love, while also exposing negative, harmful, and shameful practices. End quote. An excellent summary. The way we'll proceed is that Marge will introduce Goldie, then Goldie will talk to us about On Division, very special, and then we'll have a Q&A period in which you can ask Goldie questions, mostly by raising your hand electronically. I'll explain about that later. Although most of this program is being recorded, the Q&A period will not be recorded. And now Marge London will tell you about Goldie's background.
Thanks. Thank you, Robin. It's a pleasure to introduce Goldie Goldbloom, whose life has been rich and interesting. Goldie grew up in Western Australia, part of a farming family. Her grandparents were pioneers in Western Australia, and the farm they founded is still family-owned. Goldie gravitated to Hasidism at a very early age, studying at seminaries in Melbourne and New York before marrying and becoming the mother of 8 children. With such a busy household, she learned how to make the most of even small amounts of time to write stories. At the start of her writing career, when her children were young, Goldie says she did most of her writing after midnight in her dry bathtub, which she cozily lined with a quilt. Later, as a single mom, she took her kids to grad school with her when she was studying for her MFA at Warren Wilson College in North Carolina. Now, Goldie lives in Chicago and has taught creative writing at the University of Chicago and Northwestern University. She is a founding member of Eshel, an advocacy organization for Orthodox LGBTQ individuals. On Division is Goldie's 4th book. Her previous books are The Paperback Shoe, a World War II novel set in Australia, When, a historical novel about artists Auguste Rodin and Gwen John, and You Lose These, a short story collection. In addition, Goldie's stories have been published in a number of anthologies and journals, and her work has been honored with prestigious awards and fellowships. As far as On Division, it not only received the 2020 Fiction Award from the Association of Jewish Libraries, but was also chosen to be San Francisco's One Bay, One Book selection this past year. The book is being translated into multiple languages and will soon be published in Germany, France, and Israel. We are thrilled to host Goldie and to introduce her to you today. Please go ahead, Goldie, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Marge. That's by far the most comprehensive one I think I've ever heard, dear God.
Oh.
I was like, is that really me? I think it is though, but yes, oh gosh. And thank you so much, Robin, and to the whole organization for inviting me to come out and speak. I'm very excited. And thank you for everyone for reading the book, if you did, or potentially wanting to read the book. So a lot of times when people see Hasidic people in the street, this is how I like to start. A lot of times when people see Hasidic people in the street, they think, oh my goodness, you know, there's somebody strange or different than me. And it's true, look a bit different, right? And there are two sort of ways of approaching that. One way is people are like, oh, the Hasidim, they must be very saintly people. And you see some of that happening in some books that have been written about Hasidim in the past. And then you see the other thing, oh, you know, those religious people, oh, I can't stand them, you know, oh, they're awful, they're devils or whatever. And that's not true either. And for myself as a writer, you know, I'm always interested in this place in the middle, the balance place, where you can see both aspects of something. And in the case of the Hasidic world, I looked and looked, I read all these different books and I thought, none of these get it right. You know, I live in the Hasidic world, so none of these get it right. They all are either looking from the outside in, like wishing, you know, and that's the saintly thing. Oh, so saintly, so special. And then the other version is people who've left. And you mentioned in the introduction, Shulam Dean's book, Those Who Go Do Not Return, and also Deborah Feldman's book, Unorthodox. And both of those books, while excellent books, especially Shulam's, I'll give a plug for Shulam there, are from the perspective of somebody who is unhappy and has left the community and is looking back with some anger, typically. And so I thought, well, it would be interesting to see if I could write a book that was able to present a balanced perspective from inside the Hasidic world, because that's never been done. And for myself, I ended up having more of a push to do that, because I thought a while ago, I thought, oh, one of my children was not doing what he needed to do. He was sort of being a bit of a lazy butt. And I thought, I'm going to try and inspire him to do more. And so I said to him, why don't we have a 10-day creative, like a creative holiday? And I'll go and lock myself in my study and I'll write for 10 days, and you'll go and lock yourself in your recording studio. He's a musician, and you'll record music for 10 days. And at the end, we'll present each other what we made, and it will be great. And he said, yes. And I thought, oh, that's awesome. And then I thought, oh no, what am I going to write? Because I usually research very heavily the things that I write. So I thought, oh gosh, it's got to be something that I know a lot about already. And so in my case, I thought, well, make it, you know, the first morning I'm sitting in my office going, oh dear, what should I write about? And so I pulled out a paper and I thought, well, what do I know a lot about? And I thought, well, I know a lot about Hasidim because I live in the Hasidic community. And I know a lot about Williamsburg because I worked there for years. And I know a lot about gay people, LGBT individuals, because of my advocacy program that I was involved in. And I know a lot about midwifery because I trained to be a midwife and have 8 children. So I thought, yeah, I could write about that. So I started writing a story about things that I know about. And for me, it went very quickly. I finished the entire first draft of the novel in 10 days. Because I often write very fast. When I have an opportunity to write, I write very fast. But in this case, it went exceptionally fast because I wasn't researching anything. I was just writing from what I knew. And And I enjoyed it. And then at the end of the 10 days, I came out and I was like, ta-da, look what I made. And my son was like, that's great. And I said, what'd you make? And he said, nothing. So for myself, I was like, oh, darn it. Oh, well. But he did. A year later, he did his own recording. But for me, the creative holiday worked well. And so in the story, as you said in the introduction, in the story, it's about a 57-year-old woman who gets pregnant with twins. And she's expecting, she lives in Williamsburg. She's part of the Hasidic community in Williamsburg. And she's thinking, well, I'm a grandmother and I'm about to be a great grandmother. I'm over with having children. And instead, in the opening pages of the novel, you see this woman struggling with this news and trying to decide what she should do about it. And ultimately, she doesn't tell her husband. And not telling her husband is part of a reaction to something that happens in the novel. And the thing that happens in the novel that we find out about is that her son, one of her children, Lipa, has committed suicide. He's left the home. He's been kind of rejected from the community because he's gay. And the mother has never accepted it. She's never accepted that he's gay. She's never accepted that he's committed suicide. And she's kind of moved into a place where she can't talk about him. And as a result of not being able to talk about him, she ends up not being able to talk about her son, her new children, the twins that she's expecting. And this becomes a big problem for her. And that's what happens in the story. So sometimes people ask me about this book, what was my intention? Was my intention to write a story specifically just about the Hasidic community? Is it specifically just about gay people in the Hasidic community? Is it this or that? And I like to point out before we even get into a discussion that I'm a literary writer. I don't write just about something small like the Jewish community, the Hasidic community in Williamsburg. When I write, I hopefully am able to write about something much bigger while setting it in a smaller situation. So the microcosm kind of is reflective of something macrocosmic, something larger that I'm interested in. And in the case of this story, the larger thing that I'm interested in is the way in which people, not just Hasidic people, but people in general, create these divisions between themselves. That's why the title is On Division. That's why there's a bridge on the front cover. There's these divisions between people that spring up when we don't understand something about somebody else. So like if I'm walking down the street and I have my hat on and I have my clothes and everything, when people see me, they often sort of look and then look away. Or in the case of like one of my gardeners came over and said, are you a nun? And I was like, no, you got that wrong. So there's an automatic, when we see somebody who's different than us, there's this automatic sort of pushing away and othering. And this othering is what I was concerned about. Like when we are unable to make these connections between, let's say, Republicans and Democrats, that's timely. Black people and white people, also very timely. Gay people and straight people. All of these different things create these divisions. And I was curious, what happens? How are we able to bridge? There's the bridge. How are we able to bridge these situations when they're so challenging? And in the case of my story, Sari, the main character, struggles. She struggles tremendously because from her point of view, being gay is wrong. And so how can she reconnect? How does she reconnect with her son, Lipa? And ultimately, how does she reconnect with her husband, Yidel, who also has a different point of view from her? So that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm curious about. And I hope that's a good springboard. Robin, is that enough chat?
Well, on one hand, I could listen to you all day, but I think that is a very lovely background, and we can go from there because I'm sure people have lots of questions. So thank you, Goldie. That was really illuminating and thoughtful, as you always are. And it's helpful to have that background to the book.